One last bit of Bitcoin propaganda, courtesy of MicroStrategy and Micheal Saylor. MicroStrategy has announced that now its non-employee board members are going to be paid in Bitcoin, right? So this is supposed to focus or highlight how Bitcoin is a medium of exchange, right? Because people are going to be paid in Bitcoin. And after all, MicroStrategy has a bunch of Bitcoin, so it really would be great if they could unload this Bitcoin on their employees. But that's not actually what's happening. All that MicroStrategy is doing, if you just read behind the headline, is they will be giving their board members the option of having their dollar compensation converted into Bitcoin at the time of payment. So in other words, whatever they are owed in US dollars, if they want, MicroStrategy will pay them the equivalent in Bitcoin at the moment of transfer. That is not the same thing as being paid in Bitcoin. Being paid in Bitcoin when it comes to compensation, let's say a salary, would be that the compensation is set in a quantity of Bitcoin. And then when the payments are due, you are paid that quantity of Bitcoin regardless of what it may be worth in dollars or any other currency. But of course, nobody is going to do that because the future value, market value, because there's no real value to Bitcoin, but there is a market value, but the future value is extremely uncertain. Nobody really knows what it will be worth, if anything. And so people don't want to set future payments in Bitcoin. They don't want to do work and then not get paid what they think the work is worth. That's why Bitcoin is not a unit of account. And even Micheal Saylor isn't using Bitcoin as a unit of account. The unit of account for these compensation packages to board members is the US dollar. It's just that Bitcoin is a method of payment, not the unit of account. But you could pay people in anything. I mean, they could say, hey, we'll pay you in wheat. We'll pay you in oil. We'll pay you in pennies. I mean, how do you want to get paid, right? Once we calculate it. No, yes, I agree that making those Bitcoin transfers is relatively simple, right? When you're talking about a large amount of money, you can transfer some Bitcoin, especially for MicroStrategy, because they've already got all this Bitcoin. They don't have to go out and buy it. So the extent that they can easily pay it to somebody if they want it. But again, that's more of a barter transaction. You basically have a board member who is willing to barter their work for Bitcoin, but they're not willing to price their work in Bitcoin. They want to price their work in dollars so they make sure they get paid adequately for their time, but they are willing to accept Bitcoin in payment through a barter transaction at the point that they get paid. Now, of course, what they do with that Bitcoin once they get it, it's up to them. I mean, my guess would be they're not going to sell it, because if they were going to sell it, they would just take the payment in cash. So maybe you do have some MicroStrategy board members who want Bitcoin, but they just don't have enough confidence in the future value of Bitcoin to have their compensation specifically denominated in Bitcoin. They still want it denominated in dollars. They're only willing to accept the payment in Bitcoin based on its market value in dollars at the time they're paid. But again, Bitcoin is not a unit of account. It is not a medium of exchange for any practical transactions, and it's certainly not a store of value because it has no value to store. So again, Bitcoin does not meet any of the criteria necessary to be currency, let alone money.